MPH Sports Podcast. Talk sport and property with sports people discussing their careers and how property played a part in it.
Darius Charles, welcome to Talk Sport and Property. How you doing?
I'm very well, Lee. How are you?
I'm really good. I've been really looking forward to this interview with you, mate. You been okay?
Yeah, been good, been well, just going with the flow as always, trying my hand at a few new things and reading a couple of new books and looking to do a few new courses. So yeah, been busy, but, keeping myself active.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I've been watching what you do early in the morning when I'm up on Instagram. You've always got some sort of video going on, or you've already been up and exercising.
Well, not up as early as you, but I'm trying.
I'm not normal either. 4 o'clock in the morning is not normal. Okay, Darius, I know you're a fan of the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. You know how it works. We're going to split this up into two halves. We're going to talk about you and sport, and then we're going to talk about property second. So, born in Ealing, an impressive 451 games with Brentford, Ebbsfleet, Stevenage, AFC Wimbledon, and now Wycombe Wanderers. An impressive 23 goals as well. How old were you when you first joined Brentford, and where did it all start for you before this?
So I joined Brentford at about the age of 11, I would say, 10, 11.
I think it was 10 according to Wikipedia.
Whatever Wikipedia says is right. I hadn't been playing football that long before, funnily enough. I wasn't necessarily a massive football fan, between the ages of, 2 and 6 or 7. So I didn't really play much. And at about the age of, 8, maybe, I started to find a real fondness for it. And I'd play in the park all the time with my uncle. And then I ended up playing for my local team called Hamwell Celtic. And I was there for a couple of years. And those 2 years were so incredible. We went to football tournaments at Butlins and Pontins and Centre Parks, and they were such incredible and enjoyable experiences. My nan would take me back in those days, and we'd have to get a lift by one of our teammates, and I could just remember coming back sometimes. It'd be so muddy, wet, and you get back, and the best thing ever was stripping yourself naked and getting into a warm bath and then having a hot chocolate afterwards. That was the best thing ever. So then, after that, I ended up getting a trial at Brentford because they opened a cage on the estate. They saw me playing there, and they were like, right, is your mum around? Because we'd love to get you down at Brentford. So I ended up having to run home, drag her to the park to get her to sign these papers. And that is essentially where my journey began at Brentford at the age of 10, 11. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Your son, come to think of it, is he going through the same path as you at the moment? Is he at Fulham?
Yeah, he's at Fulham, so he's doing he's starting off a little bit better than I am. But he's following in his father's footsteps, so to speak. And it's I know how difficult the journey is. Mm-hmm. I say quite fortunate in a sense that mine was probably the easiest route taken, get into an academy or a centre of excellence as it was called at that time, and then stay there up until getting a professional contract. Although even in that, there's so many pitfalls and challenges and hurdles to overcome, but it's essentially the easiest route to take. And he, funny enough, has already been released and re-signed by Fulham, which was difficult at the time for him and for me as his dad, but he showed real resilience and determination and strength of character to actually get signed again, or come back on trial and get signed again, which was actually brilliant because it taught him resilience, and how important it is to apply yourself, to your work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when Jamie wasn't offered a professional contract with Watford, it was only 3 months later he got offered a professional contract at QPR, and I just think that literally that fear of losing out again just made him drive and made him better than than what he was playing at the time. So yeah, listen, he clearly takes after his dad, mate. So congratulations. I wish him well. Well, look, we're going to go back to your career. So on the 7th of May, the final day of the 2004-2005 season, you make your first team debut at home to Hull in a 2-1 win at left midfield. Now, we've known each other for a year and a half, 2 years now, and this was a shock. Did you come into the academy as a midfielder? Because I only know you as a centre back.
So don't let the lack of mobility fool you now. I'm telling you, I used to be a powerful marauding centre midfielder. So when I started playing Sunday League or grassroots, I was a centre mid. And then when I signed for Brentford, or when I came into that Centre of Excellence setup, I actually played up front. And, I was with the development squad, first. And we played a numerous amount of games. And we played Manchester United, funny enough. And I played up front that game. And I never forget it because we beat them 12-5. And I scored 7 goals playing up front. So I ended up, signing to the Centre of Excellence as a striker. And I played up front for, I would say, 2 or 3 years until we lost our left back, it was, at the time. And I was like the only left-footed player in the squad, myself and one of my good mates, Ryan Watts, who's a left winger. But at the time, they was like, we want you to play left back because, one, we don't have a left back, and 2, it would give you a better view of the game. You've been playing with your back to goal, now see what it's like to play facing goal. And then I don't know whether it was because I played well enough there or we just didn't end up getting another left back, that they were just like, oh, hey, I guess left back's your new position. So, I went through the youth system pretty much at left back predominantly. And then when I signed as a scholar, I kind of played in between roles. So it was bit left back, bit centre half. But the majority of my scholarship, I played at fullback until maybe the last year of my scholarship, where they moved me into centre half, which is where ultimately I got my pro contract through playing.
Darius, you mentioned power there. It's quite funny, actually, because on Sunday, I was with Scott Davis. He came to watch Jamie have a one-on-one session with Carly Osborne. He was asking, we're doing the niceties, and he said, oh, you got a busy week and your podcast. I said, well, funny enough, I'm doing Darius Charles at Wycombe. He said, that boy has got a serious left foot. He said, when we played academy football against each other, Darius hit a ball and he broke the crossbar. He said, I've never, ever seen that, ever. I was like, well, how can you break a crossbar?
Well, so
knowing full well that I had done my research and I'm talking about as a midfielder and a centre forward, we can come into your positions throughout the pod. I was thinking, well, hang on a second, this guy's got more in the locker than I thought.
Well, see, this is the thing. They didn't have, social media back then and YouTube and all those good things. So who knows what Darius would have gone on to be had he, had we had access to that. But no, it was a Darius special of mine from left back. I would literally take the ball and maraud past everyone, and it would either end up in like a shot or an opportunity. Like it was like a signature move of mine, so to speak. And as I said, as time got on and injuries and ailments happened, then that slowly started to come out of Darius's game. Yeah.
Look, tell us about that debut. I love this sort of conversation. It's a home fixture. You've been at the club since 10 years of age, 11 years of age. I'm going to expect, as a football fan, last game of the season, depending if they've had a good year or not, it's often at full capacity. I mean, did you have your family in the stands with you? Did you feel the pressure? Was there any sort of pre-match nerves? I'm really keen to know more.
So it really was like such a great day for me. And I remember I had my nan there, my grandma there. I can't remember who else was there. Maybe my little brother, or maybe he came to a game after that. I can't remember because he would have only been about 6 at that time. But I just remember Brentford feeling like flipping Anfield. Do you know what I mean? It was like, it just felt like there was so many people there. And, it's May, right? So it's like the sun is shining and it's the last day of the season. It's just like, and you mentioned Carly, obviously, and like Carly's one of my best friends that we came through the youth team system together, and to get to make your debut with like some of your best friends was like just an incredible experience. And then to go on and win it was just, it was just everything. And Yeah, it was just, it was everything, man. It was so good.
Because I mentioned to Ozzy that I'd looked up the team sheet that day, and he was in there, and he said, "Well, that's funny enough. That was my debut too."
Yeah. So we obviously, like I say, Carly's footballing journey was a bit different. He didn't come to Brentford until about the age of, I think it was the scholar year, because he'd been about, unfortunately he wasn't able to get scholars elsewhere, wherever he'd been on a few trials, and he came to Brentford and ended up getting a scholarship. And being a local boy to myself, we used to come in all the time, like me, him, Ryan Watts, Sean Hillier, Ryan Peters. We all travelled in together, So we were thick as thieves. So to make my debut with him, it was just such a great experience, and it just, doing the thing you love is one thing, but to be able to do it with your friends as well is just like it adds a whole nother layer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's class, isn't it? Well, in January 2006, you signed a new one-year contract with an option of a further year, which was in effect from June, further that in 2006. How did negotiations go, and were you happy with the contract that you signed at the time?
Yeah, I think at that time in football, everything was pretty standardized. So, there wasn't much room for negotiation, so to speak, unless you were a world beater at that moment in time. It was pretty standard. First year scholar was on 45 quid, second year, 50 quid, third year was on like 90 quid. But at the time I came in, they kind of they stopped the third year scholar. So it was a 2-year scholarship. So it went from 50 quid to, I think my first pro was 150 quid.
Okay. And
then the next contract was 250 quid. So it was like, regardless of whether, I was just happy to be a professional football player, right? Because
did you represent yourself? Did you have an agent that came in to negotiate the terms for your contract? Or?
No, I believe being representing myself, but like I said, it wasn't even a matter of representation. It was almost like, this is the standard.
Yeah.
So they just kind of put it in front of you, you just sign it, and you like go on your merry way. It's not like there's no real room for negotiation, or you're not made to feel as though there is negotiation to be had. Like I said, unless you was like a world beater, it's just this is the standard thing.
Yeah. During the next part of your career, you experienced quite a few loan moves. I think I've noted 6 here between sort of 2006 and 2008. You had Thurrock, Staines, Yedding, Crawley, Sutton, and Ebbsfleet. What did those sort of loan moves do for you as a young professional?
So I always say this to kids now, like the most important thing is to get games, and it really is, right? Because if you're not playing games, then you're not able to apply everything you're doing in training. And essentially training is just sharpening your tools so you can actually use them, right? But if you never get to use them on a Saturday, then they're no good, and they just start to rust essentially. So going out on loan, as difficult as it was, because obviously in my mind I was like, I want to play for the first team. So whenever I went out on loan, I went out with a point to prove. It's like, I'm going to go out, be the best that I can be, and come back and show what I've done. And I definitely done that in the sense where I went out and I would say all my loan moves were successful. And when I would come back, I might get a little go in the first team, but it wouldn't necessarily work out, so to speak. Because essentially, like, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to go into the first team.
Yeah, because that's the purpose of a loan move, really, isn't it? Is to go out, get experience, come back. Because also, in between each move, you continue to be part of Brentford's plans. You made 37 appearances before you then ended up signing for Ebbsfleet in what turned out to be a really historical move. Do you want to explain more about that?
So Ebbsfleet was my last loan move, and that one was the one that was most beneficial because the others were very difficult. I was a young boy from Ealing, and I think, mistake me if I'm wrong, I can't remember what Wikipedia says, but I can only remember playing one game for Thurrock, if I'm totally honest. So like you said, I went on a lot of loan moves, and I don't know how beneficial that is in the sense of, bedding down a place to call home to get a sustained period of games, because you're going into different teams in different leagues with different, mentalities or ways of playing and whatnot. So it's kind of like one minute there's such a lack of stability. It's like one minute you're here, then you're there, then you're doing something else, then you've got a new manager to contend with. So the amount of loans, I would say, weren't necessarily beneficial, but the loans in which I got the most from, I would say, are the Staines, Yeading, and obviously Ebbsfleet one, because I played the most amount of games there consistently. And Ebbsfleet was a good one because Ebbsfleet was, I believe, the highest level I went on loan to at the conference in the time. And I've got a real close group of friends from there, even to this day. And one of my former teammates are actually godfather to my son. So, ended up creating a real great bond there. And then, as you said, I ended up moving in what was quite a significant move at the time because of, what it was or how it happened.
Well, how did it happen?
So I mean, I can't even. You'll probably be able to tell me better. But it was like a fan, because the club was fan owned, right?
Yeah.
And it was like the board of trustees kind of came together to
buy you,
to buy me, yeah. Which, funnily enough, my current boss was actually a part of that. Pete Kuig, they were kind of part of that consortium at the time that was a part of that. So he knows a good player when he sees one, right?
Wow. Because you were a real fan's favourite, weren't you? I mean, they even named you sort of club captain. Did you feel that you were beginning to change as a player and a person, having experienced these sort of 6 loan moves, as you said, experienced 6 different environments, 6 different managers, new personnel, coming back to Brentford, being bought by Ebbsfleet, by the fans, being made club captain? That must just give you as a player a whole new sense of confidence, really, I guess.
Yeah, definitely, because it was the first time I'd been somewhere and, was able to get comfortable, like I said, like I was made club captain. So I was able to put my feet underneath the table and feel like I was part of a bigger or a greater cause, and the manager, Liam Daesh at the time, really, really liked me. He made me feel, like an important piece there. So it was that time was great for me, and I was definitely a fan's favorite. And I've always felt as though wherever I've been, I've always endeared myself to the fans, not because I've necessarily tried to. I just feel maybe there's something that they notice in my character, like they know, like, I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I always do the best I can for the team as opposed to myself. So it's always nice to go in there, and because it was the first time really I'd felt that, obviously Brentford was the club that raised me. The fans knew a little about me. I was a young boy who came from the youth team, but they hadn't exactly seen all of what I could do. Or I guess they had me in a moment in time where I wasn't able to express, what I had to its fullest. So Ebbsfleet was a great learning experience for me, as well as cherished memories.
Yeah, no, I can see why, because you did begin to start attracting interest from other clubs. And whilst Ebbsfleet agreed a sale for you, and I think it was like an £80,000 move with another player, you decided against the move up north. Was it York? It was York,
yeah. Me and Michael Gash at the time.
Yeah, that was right, was it?
Yeah. So
the reason for that, is it because you're a family man, lived in Ealing, everything was a bit more local, and just York was just too far to do what you do?
Yeah, York was it was too much for me because, like I said, I was like, I was still young man. I was probably, I don't know, I couldn't have been any older than 21 at the time. Going to Ebbsfleet was already a big ask for me because, like I said, I was living with my partner and my not even 1-year-old son at the time in Twickenham. So I would have to, get from Twickenham to Brixton, and then my teammate would take us all the way to Kent, and then obviously drive back to Brixton, and then I catch a train to Twickenham. So it was a lot for me, and for me to, at that time, who was I'm really family orientated, and I'm a homebody, right? So to move to York at that time, which is 3-4 hours away from family, having created a new family, was just too much for me. And York were willing to bend over backwards for me. They were talking about allowing me to have Mondays off, so I could have long weekends at the club and whatnot. And they literally done everything in their power to accommodate me. But I just felt like I didn't want to come there and have fans and players feel as though, you know, I'm taking liberties, so to speak. I wouldn't want them to feel like, you know, I'm getting extra or preferential treatment. So in the end, I just had to turn down the offer.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it wasn't the only club that was interested. I mean, look, in light of Ebbsfleet being relegated, you decided to turn down the chance for a new 2-year deal and sign for League Two side Stevenage. They came through with your compensation fee, and was that a move that you felt just a bit more comfortable about, was it?
Oh, definitely. I mean, Stevenage, funny enough, was a team that I really admired when we were in the conference together, because everyone spoke about Stevenage and how things were done at the club, and, you know, the money they had, or what, you know, the what they had access to. So, you know, you're playing like the best team in the league, or one of the best teams in the league, definitely the toughest team to play in the league. And you're like aspiring to, you know, be a part of a setup like that. So when they came in for me, it was a no-brainer, really, in terms of making that move at that point in time.
Well, first season at Stevenage, you've managed 33 matches, scoring 4 goals, including a trip to Old Trafford, playoff final against Torquay, where you surprisingly started at centre forward.
Well, yeah.
You want to tell us more about the game and how it all ended?
So, I mean, for those that don't know, I've got a pretty good playoff record, the games I've played. I'm just going to say that. That's my playoff record is, you know, as good as anyone's. I put it up against anyone's. Yeah. But yeah, so that season, funny enough, when I first signed for Stevenage, you know, I'd obviously been relegated from Ebbsfleet. They'd been promoted champions from conference. And I came in, you know, having played well as a centre half in a team that was struggling at the time financially. So I came in expecting to just play. And the first thing the manager told me was like, "You'll never play centre half for me. Like you're not good enough at centre. You're not a centre half." I was like, "What?" So basically, he told me, you know, I'm a left back, and he also sees me as like a Les Ferdinand-esque type player. So I was just yeah, I was just like, I could not believe the conversation I was having, right? But fast forward to the playoff final, you know, having played a season predominantly at left back and centre forward, going into that game playing up front wasn't a surprise to me or any of my teammates, because I'd shown how well equipped I was to play up front in that Stevenage side. So yeah, going in, I picked up an injury, fun enough, that week in training. So there was really a lot of like worry and anxiety on my shoulders, you know, and the gaffer asked me constantly, "Are you going to be okay? Are you going to be okay?" Like put me on the spot about it. So going into the game, like I was extremely tentative and nervous, I must admit, but my mindset was that of, I might like, there's only 2 ways this is going to go. I'm going to have a worldie, or I'm going to get injured trying to have a worldie. Like there was no other option in my mind, you know. I ended up having a worldie and coming off after maybe 60 or 70 minutes or something like that, assisting the goal that was scored by John Messina.
No, I know, I've read it.
Yeah. So, you know, so all in all, it was, you know, it was a good day. It was a good day. And at Old Trafford, which is, obviously I'm a United fan, so that was huge for me.
Am I wrong in assuming you've never played there before?
Yes, you are wrong in assuming that. Going back some years now, I think year 7 or 8, it was a school tournament, right? So we played, you know, it was borough, then it was county, then it was, you know, like southeast.
Yeah.
And at the time we didn't know, we were just playing in the school tournament, right? And when we got to the penultimate tournament, they were like, if you win this tournament, like you're gonna go into like a group of 8 or whatever, and the winners of that are gonna get to play in a final at Old Trafford. So we were like, what? Ended up winning that. Ended up playing at Old Trafford. I scored the winner. Yeah, so we were like named the best 7-a-side team in the country, and we got to meet, you know, Bobby Charlton like presented us with the award. So we got to meet Bobby Charlton, and then we got to watch the game afterwards, which was United Coventry. And I remember Scholes scoring the winner, and we were actually behind the goal that he scored in. And ever since then, I became a huge United fan. That was the moment where I actually started to support a team, and United was that team. So yeah, that was my second outing at United. Yeah.
I'm glad I asked the question, yeah? Well, 2 days later, you scored a 1-1 draw against Chesterfield, but I know you suffered a knee injury. Was the second season just a bit more frustrating at Stevenage?
Yeah, it was very difficult for me because I'd actually, in that first season, I picked up like a hernia. So I needed a double hernia repair at the end of that season. And Stevenage, in terms of work and graft, was another level to anything I'd ever come across before. And I found it, the first season was very difficult for me mentally and physically. It's just that because we got promoted, you kind of go, okay, it's worthwhile. But I remember saying to Graham Wesley verbatim, an hour after we got promoted, when we were in the lounge at Old Trafford and with family and friends and having food and drink, he said, "You all right?" And I said, "I never want to do that again." That's how just tired I was, just being promoted to League One, in the playoff finals. And I literally said to him, I never want to do this again. So I went into the second season having had a double hernia repair, as I say. So it took me a while to get going. And the injuries I got off the back of that were just because of that, just because, it's another step up again. I'm going in a bit worse for wear. And
if you think about it, from academy football to conference to League Two, now into League One.
Yeah. I definitely went the rough route. Nowadays kids can be a little bit, they can tailor their progress a little bit more, whether it be youth team to 23s or go on loan and whatnot. Whereas back then it was like everything was give as much of you as you've got until you can't anymore. So it definitely made me a man, so to speak, but there was definitely, some tender loving care that was missed in my projection to where I got to,
You still managed to record, I think it was 34 appearances, scoring another 5 goals. But the club offered you another 2-year deal. I mean, was this sort of the club you wanted to commit your future to?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'd always say this, I'm very, I don't know, maybe I've got attachment commitment issues. I don't know what it is, but it's yeah, I do make these places my home, so in my head, I didn't have any intention to go anywhere. I just wanted to get as far as possible as I could with Stevenage. And in that second year, if I'm not mistaken, I think we went to the playoffs. Graham had left, I think, in that January. I could be wrong. That could be the year after. And Gary Smith came in, and yeah, I loved the club. It was home to me. It was easy. I'd not long, I think, moved locally to a place called Hitchin, which was 15 minutes down the road. So my life was just so comfortable at the time. And and I was a part of the furniture there. They put up a poster of myself and the playoff winning side on the side of the stadium. So it's do you know what I mean? I'm home. I'll stay here for the rest of my days.
After your contract expired, you signed for Burton, which, if please correct me if I'm wrong, it was a bit short-lived because you signed there but went almost immediately out on loan to AFC Wimbledon.
Yeah, so what happened was the season before I got injured at Stevenage, and it was so frustrating because at the time I was playing incredibly well at Stevenage at centre half. Funny enough, when Graham Wesley had come back, I'd been playing centre half and I'd been playing extremely well. So I kept playing there once he came back, and I was playing the best football I'd ever played at that point in time. And I ended up getting a really bad injury that January. So I basically ruptured my whole ankle and broke my leg because of a bad tackle. And I remember being so upset at the time because I knew it was bad. I just didn't know how bad. And when I went for the X-ray the next day, they said, look, your leg's broken, but there's a lot more in there that we can't simply see. So I ended up going for an MRI, which, showed the extent of the damage. I went to see a surgeon called James Calder, who is someone I've seen a couple of times for simple ankle surgeries. Great guy. He's the guy that operated on Wayne Rooney when he done his metatarsal. Incredible surgeon. I think at that time he may have not told me the extent because he didn't want to worry me the extent of the injury. But it was but that in itself was a career-ending injury, right? So I ended up that summer garnering interest from a few clubs, from I think it was Cambridge, maybe one other. And I remember one day driving home from the training ground, and my agent called me and said, Burton are interested. The thing is, though, you have to go and meet Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank at Heathrow because he's flying out like in a couple of hours. I was like, what? I was like, huh? So I was like, okay, yeah, wicked. Like, I'll go. So drove to Heathrow, waiting for him. He's literally gone, right, Darius, like, I've seen your clips. I like you and I want you. And I'm like, whoa, wait, like, what? And he's like, listen, I've got to fly out. I'm going out to Vegas. Oh, it was crazy. It's like, I'm going to Vegas. We'll get your agent. Agents will talk, blah, blah, blah. So he just left me in Heathrow as he's going to catch his plane to have a good time. And I'm like, flabbergasted. I'm like, how has this come about? So I ended up obviously signing for Burton, but I'm injured still. And I didn't get fit until the following March or January, February or March. And by that time, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank had gone to QPR and we had Nigel Clough. And obviously, I wasn't Nigel Clough's player. So I ended up going on loan to Wimbledon once I'd come back after being out for a year.
Maybe it was just all meant to be then, because another trip to Wembley to secure promotion against Plymouth in the League Two playoff final. I mean, what an experience. Also, you've had that from Old Trafford, and you take that to Wembley and another win.
I mean, like I said, my playoff record's not too bad. It's not too shabby. But absolutely. That was the other team. So Wimbledon were interested in signing me the previous summer as well. And they obviously knew I was injured at the time as well. Ned Lardley was a manager, great guy, really accommodating. But I ended up going to Burton because they were a League One side, right? And Wimbledon were a League Two side at the time.
Yeah, naturally, yeah.
So again, everything come full circle. I've had a conversation with Wimbledon, ended up going to Burton because Wimbledon, Burton was just a more appealing option for myself. Come full circle, ended up going to Wimbledon at the middle of March, I would say. And the remit was just to get into the playoffs. They were just outside the playoffs. The remit was to get into the playoffs, which we ended up doing, I think, a game or two before, the end of the season. And as you said, history rewriting itself again. We got to the playoff finals and we won 2-0 via goals from Lyle Taylor and Adebayo Akinfenwa.
Wow. Well, look, the AFC Wimbledon deal became permanent and you ended up playing 74 times there over that 2-year period. You really enjoyed it there, didn't you?
Listen, again, like I said, when I go somewhere, like I make it home. So I'd been at Burton, which was, a little ways from home. I moved to a place called Solihull, which was about 45 minutes from Burton, about an hour and a half from home. So, and my son was obviously back at home, with his mum in Hampton. So again, it was just a juggling act for me. And as great as an experience it was in terms of a learning experience for myself, I was happy to be back home. I moved back home. The training ground is literally 15, 20 minutes from my son's school. So after training, I could pick him up from school and drop him home. And it just fit back into my life and the things that meant everything to me. Family is the biggest priority of mine. So outside of working to earn a wage and do the thing I love, my family fit in perfectly. Everything was perfect for me. So again, got my feet under the table. Fans loved me. I loved them. It was so comfortable and convenient for me. And it was just that again.
Oh, it sounded like a perfect match. But on the 15th of June, you signed for Wycombe Wanderers. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, Darius, but you sign a 1-year deal, then get released before re-signing on a short-term deal until January 2020. Now, I know the story because I've been to Wycombe training ground a few times, spoken about this, but I want you to sort of tell our listeners. But after that, the manager, obviously Gareth, he was so impressed with your performances that he's then rewarded you with a new 18-month contract. Tell us about these last 2.5 years, because, I mean, I know the bond. I've been very fortunate enough to know you and a lot of the squad. But it is such a close, tight group that were favourites to be relegated, beat the odds, got promoted.
Yeah.
You did it again. Over to you.
Oh my God. So the last 2.5 years have been nothing short of a roller coaster of emotions. So I was on holiday. So I'd been offered a contract at Wimbledon, which I didn't believe matched my value, which is, fine, everyone has their opinion. So I started to listen to entertain other ideas. And Wycombe, Gareth and Dobbo are two people. I've known Dobbo since I was 10. So, we've always had a relationship. And the gaffer I knew through my playing time when I was at Stevenage, and he was playing at Wycombe. So we had a mutual respect and rapport of each other. And we'd spoken in previous years, maybe once or twice before, about coming to Wycombe. So signing there was quite easy in a sense of like, we already had a rapport. That wasn't much, but I ended up, right, I was on holiday and there was a deal in place. The deal was actually a 2-year deal at first. I get off a plane, I get home, I get in my car and I drive to the training ground. I do a medical, which took all day at the BMI hospital. I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm shattered. At the end of the day, instead of signing, the physio tells me that I've still got some fluid on my hip, which is of some concern. And at this time, like, I'd had a couple of issues with my hip, but I didn't know the severity of it because it had kept me out for a week or two here and there, but nothing, serious. So essentially I'd failed the medical. And then the gaffer called me that night and said, look, Darius, like, we don't fail medicals here. We're going to find a way to make it work. So I came in the next day and done some work with Waitsy, who's the fitness coach. Mm-hmm. And after conversations, the contract ended up being a year with an option, and the option gets triggered if I'm involved in the squad 22 times. So in my head, I'm like, one, I just want to get it signed because I'm still hungover from the, jet lag from the trip. Two, like, it's really getting frustrating now. Mm. And three, like, I would have to be blind, deaf and dumb not to be able to get into 22 squads, or at least that's how I found it. I'm like 22, so I don't even have to play. I just have to be in the match day squad. Like, easy.
Walk in the park.
Walk in the park, right? Day 3 of pre-season, I break down. So I'm like, okay. I go to see the surgeon or the specialist, and he just, he kind of says, let's look at multiple avenues here. So I ended up having an injection in my hip, which is like a gel-like fluid, which was meant to help ease the friction and lubricate my joint. After like rest and train, I was still struggling. It took me up until November to get back to full fitness, in which I played about 7 games. And then one Sunday morning, I woke up and I was in agony, and I called the physio and said, look, I'm in a lot of pain here. I don't know what's happening, but I'm in a terrible amount of pain. Ended up kind of going through the same procedure of rest, train, and nothing was working. Like, nothing was working. Ended up going back to the surgeon again, expecting him to say, we're going to operate. This is what, the period of time is looking like, so on and so forth. But what he said in all actuality was, I can't operate on this, or I'm not going to operate on this hip because your hip is not good. You don't have a stable hip. And if I do anything in this, you are probably going to need to come back for a full hip replacement. So I would advise you to retire now. So I, obviously, as you can imagine, I just, in pure disbelief, couldn't imagine it. So fast forward to a couple of weeks before the end of the season, I go back in the gaffer's office and I say, look, at first, obviously, I was going to retire. Like, I was just seeing out the days. But for the first time in a long time, since I'd even come to the club, I'm actually starting to feel better. And would it be okay to come back for pre-season? And he, said, listen, Darius, if you're starting to feel better, you can come back, you can train, anything you need, we're willing to give, because you've given so much to this club. And I apologized because I didn't feel as though I'd offered much or anything, or at least even little towards what I wanted to offer. And he said, listen, your character alone has meant so much to this group and has been so powerful. Like, I would, come back. I said, cool. So came back, got fit, trained, was involved in the preseason games. It's funny because I always say this. I remember when I played my first preseason game back, I think it was Matt Cecil. I'm going to have a word with him, actually. I was announced as a trialist number 6. And bear in mind, I was like one of the marquee signings, that same time last year. And it just like, it kind of made me laugh anyway. But at the end of that pre-season, the club offered me a 6-month contract, which I was incredibly grateful for, like so grateful for. And then, the beginning of, of that 2019, 2020 season started. And at this moment in time, I'm not expecting anything. Like I've signed on literally next to no money, I'm just happy to be a part of it all, to continue being a professional footballer. And our captain at the time, Adam Elab, ends up leaving. So then it's like we're traveling up to Fleetwood and we're short. And like the boys are like, you're gonna, like, you reckon you'll play? And I'm just here for banter. Do you know what I mean? I'm not even here, like, I'm just here, like, I'd like to play. I don't know about that. But then the gaffer, like it's either the night before or the day of. I feel like it was the day of. He was like, I'm going to put you in. Are you okay with that? I was like, yeah, like, I'm okay. I'm okay with that. Because at this moment in time, like, I'm just grateful for anything you give me. So yeah, okay, I'll come. Yeah, definitely, I'll play. But obviously I didn't realize how much it meant to me until just before kickoff, where I was literally like, my eyes were welling up with tears, just like, oh my God, like, I'm here. Like it was just, it's like, I'm getting all like a bit welling up now, but it's like, I was like, I can't believe it. Like, I'm here. Like, I'm not meant to be here, So 6 months later, we're doing really well. I'm definitely playing the best football of my life. If I thought I was doing it before at Stevenage, I was definitely doing it here now at Wycombe. And then that culminated in getting a further 18-month contract extension.
Wow. You were the miracle man.
There's the Mango Man, Miracle Man, I take all of it. I take all, but no, it is always nice to hear people say how inspiring my story is and whatnot. And I'm glad that it helps inspire people. For me, though, the most important thing is that I was able to explore, the depths of my capabilities, and that's something that I can take with me in no matter what it is I do. So it was, it's incredible. And obviously, for those that don't know, the ending of that story or that season was just, the cherry on top of it all.
I just want to, before we go into the quick fire round and talk about the property side of this pod, we need to talk about the end. Do you want to set us up? Well,
so, I mean, you literally couldn't write this. And funnily enough, Neil Harmon came in and did write a story about, the Wycombe dressing room, which everyone should read because it is an incredible read. And we got to, I don't know, about March, right? We got to March and COVID hits. And then, we're in a global pandemic and the world's in lockdown. So there's all this talk about how the football season is going to continue. Are we doing points per game? Are we going to do points per game based on home and away form, and the games that have continued? Are we just going to completely stop the league? Like, what's going to happen? So no one knew. Being little old Wycombe, and there being bigger clubs who felt more entitled to to being promoted, it was against the odds. Everyone just didn't want us to be part of the party, so to speak. And then they finally came to the conclusion that they were going to do points per game, which put us third. So now we're in the playoffs, right? And we've got about 5 weeks, I think it was, to get fit to play Fleetwood.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the two teams we end up coming up against in the playoffs are two teams that we had, that there is no love lost between the two sides. Oxford are our rivals, and Fleetwood, in our recent history, there's been a bit of back and forth or whatever. So we end up playing Fleetwood in the first round, away leg. We beat them 4-1. They had a man sent off. We beat them 4-1.
That was a crazy tackle, wasn't it?
Insane. Insane.
I watched it going. He can't stay on the pitch.
Insane.
Was it on Joe?
Sorry?
It was on Joe, wasn't it? Was it on Joe?
It was on JJ, yeah. It was on JJ, yeah. So they ended up getting 2 men sent off. They had getting 2 men sent off that game, but we ended up winning the game 4-1, right? if I'm being totally honest with you, and these are things that aren't said beforehand because people don't want to come across arrogant or, you know, whatever the case may be, but we always knew in our dressing room that it was a special dressing room. Now, that doesn't mean we were going to get promoted, but we knew we had a very special dressing room. And going into the playoffs, anyone watching will notice that we never celebrated once up until we won the playoffs. And that's a very important thing to pay attention to, because when Oxford beat Portsmouth, they celebrated. Whereas when we beat Fleetwood at home, we obviously went on to play them in the second leg and we drew 2-2, I think it was, at home. Yeah, we drew 2-2. And we didn't celebrate after that game. We just got together, set up it, because there was still a job to do. I think it was July 15th or whatever the date was, you know, Wembley, playoff final, League One playoff final, Oxford, our rivals. We go 1-0 up early on from a Anthony Stewart goal. And then they score a jammy goal to equalise. But that being said, you know, they did have a large portion of the game where they could have scored 2 or 3, you know.
How good was Anthony's header, though?
Oh, it's incredible. It's incredible. And that is his run. It's so funny because that is his run. That's like his signature run, that backstick one. And it just, the ball, the run, the head, like he really meant it, you know, like he had to be full-blooded for it to have gone in. He really, really meant it. And it was just an incredible moment for him as well, obviously, which culminated in him getting man of the match at the end of the game because he was sensational.
Yeah.
But it goes 1-1, jammy goal. But we were fine. We weren't panicked. I mean, we were still comfortable. Then comes along Fred, who makes a late darting run and gets a penalty. JJ steps up. Now, when JJ steps up for penalties, when JJ steps up for penalties, he rarely misses. And then once he scored that penalty, we knew. We knew it was over. There was no way. With 15 minutes to go, a goal up, you know, there was no chance. And I think at the time, maybe we had like the top 3 defensive record. You know, and for a long time, we had the best defensive record in the league until a shaky Christmas period. So we knew how to not concede goals, right? So it was just, we knew we were just waiting for, you know, the time and the ref and the whistle to go. And when it went, it was just for me personally, it was a moment of relief, because it was like, I can put this chapter to bed now, you know. Everything that I've been through, everything that's taken to get here, all the debts of gratitude I wanted to repay, like, clean slate now. Like, you done me a favor, I've repaid the favor, boom. Like, so it was really a moment of relief for me. And I don't even think, as much as I enjoyed it, definitely, I wore my medal for the whole of the summer. But I don't think I've actually given myself a chance to really kind of just step back and go, wow, what an incredible feat that actually was, you know.
It really was. I mean, apart from watching my children participate in school or football, whatever, I've only ever got emotional over 2 games of football. And I'm a very passionate person, generally anyway. But one was when Chelsea won the Champions League. And the second time was when that final whistle blew, when you were crowned champions and you were, well, not champions, but you got promoted. Because I could feel it, you know, and when, you know, B got everyone in the circle, I couldn't help myself. I've just completely and utterly gone. But yeah, look, it was an incredible season, genuinely, let alone an incredible season for you boys. And I must be honest, it's such an incredible story, and I just feel like I've just relived it. Actually, if you can look at my script, none of this was on there, and yeah, it's brought it all back. So listen, thank you for sharing it all with us, mate.
My pleasure.
Well, moving forward, we've got a quick question fire round.
Yeah.
Right, you ready?
Yeah.
Who do you support? We've done that one, haven't we?
United, Manchester United.
See, that's the only bit I don't know. Never mind. That's all right. I won't hold it again. Okay, so scoring a goal or clearing one off the line?
Clearing one off the line all day.
Okay. Best player you've ever played with?
I would have to say Paul McCarthy, because, you know, rest his soul, because he was the person who taught me how to be a centre-half.
Best player you've played against?
I'm going to say Son.
Recently?
Yeah, I'm going to say Son. To be fair, I played against him in a few years ago for Wimbledon and FA Cup as well. But both times, he's just incredible.
Your best mate in football?
Oh, wow. I'm not going to answer that because there's too many to name and I don't want to upset anyone's feelings. There's quite a few, I'll be honest with you. I'm fortunate enough to have good football friends.
Yeah, I know you do. Your favourite manager or coach that you've played for?
Oh, it has to be. See, I'll tell you why this is a difficult one, because Graham Wesley, without him, I wouldn't be the position I'm in today. And without Gareth Ainsworth and Richard Dobson, it's very difficult. That's a very difficult one. Again, it's, two different managers that have had more. They've probably been three of the most influential people in my life, let alone football. So that's going to have to be, it's them three. Yeah, so I can't pick between them three.
That's cool. What are you singing when you join a new club?
Oh, I'm singing Usher, You Don't Have to Call.
Yeah, you good?
Yeah.
Smashing it?
Yeah.
Standing on a chair, water bottle?
Oh, killing it. Get up, job done, see you later. Round of applause, next person.
Your role model growing up?
Oh, Ronaldo, R9. To the point where I wanted to play for Brazil's national team when I was a young kid.
The perfect job for you after football?
Mentoring. I think it's incredibly important. I think it's something that's missed in football nowadays. And I think it's extremely important that, players like myself who have seen it all, done it all, been through it all, go back into football and teaching kids from the age of 14, 15, before the year of scholarship, how to navigate football, give them the tools, the tricks of the trade to just make it as easy as possible for them, because you've got your young boy Jamie in it, and it's not easy. It's not all it's cracked up to be. So coming in as a mentor / coach is definitely the role I see myself playing in football.
Your name on Instagram is Everyone Loves Darius.
Yeah,
Why does everyone love Darius?
I mean, I couldn't tell you. Maybe it's my infectious, character, my intoxicating personality, my charm and wit, my sense of humor. I mean, there's a numerous amount of reasons as to why they might like me. And I guess until I find someone that doesn't like me, I couldn't tell you why. Do you know what I mean? It is what it is. It's like, it's just a scientific fact, like gravity. I don't know.
And that is the perfect way to end the first half of that podcast.
Talk Sport and Property Podcast, sponsored by MPH Sports Property Academy. Download the app today from the App Store or Google Play by typing in MPH Sports, the trusted go-to app for sports people looking to buy or learn about property.
Darius, welcome back. We met back in September 2019 when Josh Parker had kindly arranged for me to deliver a property workshop at Wycombe Wanderers. It wasn't necessary that everybody had to attend, or should I say compulsory that everybody had to attend. You did. And what was your opinion of the workshop, and what was the vibe from the rest of the squad when I left? Because it was actually a really good turnout, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think because of the group we've got at Wycombe anyway, like everyone is quite curious and quite open to new experiences. And football can be a very closed off environment where, not just footballers, but the organizations that they work for themselves don't really want outsiders coming in. So, just to get you in the building, as I'm sure how difficult it is to even get into football clubs, let alone, do you know what I mean, have conversations with the first team. But like you said, there's a big group, a lot of interest. And I think the beauty of the workshop you put on was it was easily understandable for those who knew nothing about property, i.e. me. I knew nothing about property before you came in and done the workshop. And it was very simple, very straightforward. There was a few things I didn't quite understand, but I mean, at that moment in time, it didn't feel like a foreign language, and it felt like something that I could easily pick up and learn, having the right help and guidance.
Yeah, no, Josh made me perfectly aware at the beginning, said, look, this is a tight group, so just just be prepared. I was like, okay. And I don't often get too nervous when I do these workshops, but I remember that day thinking, oh my God. And I actually came in, didn't I? And I had lunch with the boys beforehand.
Yeah.
Down, and I was sitting, in fact, I was sitting next to you. And then we walk into the room where we're about to do the workshop, and we're probably about 5 minutes in, and literally Bayos just stands up and just shuts me down and goes, yo, bro, why should I use you?
Yeah. You're like,
my God, sort of rabbit in the headlights. And I said, well, hold on a second. I said, I've not said you need to use me. I'm just... And Josh was amazing how he like stood up and said, listen, Lee's he's been brilliant for me. Because Josh at the time was looking to get an extension done in his house, and we maybe given him some revised plans, and we got some estate agents involved. We looked at some costs for him just to make sure that what he was going to go ahead and do was actually thing. And Josh said, listen, he's come to my house 3 times, he's never charged me, just listen to what he has to say. And actually, I mean, Barry was brilliant, wasn't he, for the rest of the workshop? I mean, what a character. Can I ask, what is it like working with Bayo Akinfenwa every day?
Oh man, the thing with, like, it still amazes me how humble and down to earth he is, like, to this day. Because for all intents and purposes, yes, he's a footballer. He is also a celebrity, a person of interest, a global icon, you know, a brand. So for him to work as diligently as he does every day, whether it's at the training ground or home, you know, whether it be on photo shoots or advertising or podcasting, he still picks up my phone calls every time, or at least calls me back. It's like I've never ever met a human being like him. Like, it's still like, honestly, it surprises me how he's literally my big brother. He's family to me. Do you know what I mean? And when you have people who have transcended the thing that they're doing, yet still are rooted in like real values and morals, like people like that, like, you know, they're few and far between, and he is fortunately one of those people.
Yeah, I think the way I saw it, that he was just standing up to protect the group. You know, it was quite evident that, you know, he's got this tight group, this tight bond, and he was a bit of a leader and a spokesperson for the group, and say, okay, well, I'm here to protect these guys. So you mess with them, you mess with me, type thing.
100%.
To be fair, I think by the end of the workshop, I think his guard had dropped, and to be honest, ever since that day, I've worked for Bayo, you know, and say, you know, he picks up the phone. I know him well. I know his wife Michelle. They're a lovely couple, lovely family. But yeah, well, I can imagine working with him is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Back to property. Like, you live in Ealing with your family, but you had never bought a property before I had met you. What was the reasons behind that?
I think the beauty of the way you work is you are literally word of mouth, aren't you? And you never tell people to work with you. And it's more a case of, you know, ask this person, ask that person. At the time we had Rolando Aarons on loan at Wycombe. And, you know, you said, oh, like, you know, I've worked with people who don't mind me saying the name, Dwight Gale. So, and you know what football's like. So as soon as the meeting's over, like, Riz is on the phone to Dwight and like, oh, was he looked after you? Da-da-da-da. He's like, yeah, he's great. So it's like when you have people in your dressing room vouching for yourself, and not just 1 or 2 people, more like 10, it's like, okay, let me go and see. And the beauty of what you do is you're never like selling anything. It's all, you're just educating people on property and how easy it is to actually get on the ladder. And that for me is a big thing, because I don't like people pushing things down my throat. I'm like, I'm always like, what do you have to gain from this? You know, and you should be skeptical, but the way you put across things was really easily digestible, and it just made me feel comfortable, you know, and that's why I bought my first property, thankfully investment property, with you.
Yeah, well, that was my next point, was that, you know, we've always sort of stayed in touch ever since too, hadn't we? And I've come to a few games, and then when you got promoted, you kind of reached out and said, look, I think I'm now ready. And well, how does it now feel to become a property owner and a landlord?
Oh man, it feels really, really good. It feels really good. And another thing that I failed to mention as well, which is why I decided to work with you in helping me find a property, is that you've done things for me that you didn't necessarily have to do. So whenever I needed, to figure something out or had a question to ask, like you'd always pick up your phone, you'd meet me for a coffee as and when you could. You even met up with one of my friends, to try and help them out, even though that's not necessarily what you tend to do. So it's like you went above and beyond, for me. And I hadn't even, we didn't have any vested interest at the time. We hadn't bought a property together or anything like that. And you went out of your way to do that. So I have to mention that. But it just feels great to be a landlord. The process itself was a bit arduous, not something I'm used to. So, hopefully the next one and the one after that and the one after that we get will be a lot easier because I understand the process now. But I mean, it's just so nice, man. It's so nice to have, do you know what I mean, a business set up and then see the rent money going into that account. And just, it's just, I mean, I'm a business now. I'm a businessman now because of you.
And cheers for the kind words as well. That I do accept that some of the administration can be sometimes a bit overwhelming and also an inconvenience to, especially in the championship, you've got a game sometimes every 3 days, and sometimes you don't have access to a printer. But listen, if we can control the paperwork as well, help go through some of these unfamiliar processes with you, which just allows the whole thing to happen a bit more smoother, then you tend to hopefully enjoy the whole process a little bit better. Do you now wish you'd done this a little bit earlier in your career? Now that, because it does make you feel good. And I talk about that in the workshop, doesn't it? It does have a positive impact on you as a person and sometimes in your performances.
Oh my God. Listen, I wish it is.
Thanks. We spoke about 10 years ago, shouldn't we?
Like, honestly, I mean, it's like anything. If I knew now what I knew then, or if I knew then what I know now, it would be, and that is something that I do kind of sometimes kick myself about. But I mean, listen, I was 21, I was a professional footballer. I, thought I was going to play forever, as we all do, make X amount of money, didn't really have any money management at the time, didn't know how to, the real value or worth of money or what I could get for my money. I can safely say that if I knew you back then, I would probably have anywhere between 8 or 10 properties, making me however much money a month, creating, that passive income that I wouldn't even have to, I wouldn't even have to worry about. And I think it's so incredibly important that kids are getting this information. Again, I said I want to go into mentoring and coaching, and part of that would be putting people like you in front of these boys, because careers aren't guaranteed, and they may not become professional footballers, but you can earn a good living playing semi-pro for sure. I know, because I played semi-pro, and I've got friends who play semi-pro now, and they're making good money playing semi-pro and working as well if they want to, and they can create more money from investing in property than they ever could from playing football, because they might not reach the levels that some of us are fortunate to do so. And it's just so important that that information is made accessible to these boys, and women, obviously, who are coming into the game at a younger age as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, we work with a few. We had Lisa and Viv from Arsenal recently, and we worked for a female cricketer as well in England. So we've bought her a property recently, and hopefully buying another one too. I want to ask you. I know some parts of the process was probably a little bit clunky, a little bit unfamiliar, and some of the administration probably was just a bit of a pain, really. You're organised and you're prepared at the beginning, which is what we're trying to even fine tune at the minute. After the completion of the sale, did you find it quite easy? Just, I mean, as a new landlord, you're now the owner of a property, you've got the keys with the letting agent, you found a tenant within 5 to 10 days?
5 to 10 days, yeah, less than a week.
Tenants moved in now?
I'm meant to, what's the day today? Today is the 10th. I think they're meant to move in. If they haven't moved in today, probably tomorrow. I got an email from the letting agents to say that, due to COVID, it's going to take a little bit longer, but they should be in within the next couple of days. So I'm just waiting on complete confirmation for that. But like I said, once pen put to paper and the deal was done and the sale was completed, I haven't done anything aside from maybe tick a couple of boxes through emails online, aside from,
isn't it? And I think, and I think it's also important to highlight that we will never actually stand away from you ever. So even the point of completion happens, we're still going to help you and mentor you with the tenant side. We're still going to make sure the tenant gets in. I thought your tenant was in today, actually.
I think they are in today.
Yeah, but then when the tenancy happens, if there is any problems, you can just reach out. We deal with it anyway. So hopefully it will just encourage you to maybe one day buy another one. I mean, have you got a plan for buying?
Listen, as soon as, I can't quite remember how it works, but you told me as soon as I can take equity out of this one and put it in another one, then mate, I'm going. And it's things like that. And it's just understanding, the difference between why you would have a repayment mortgage as opposed to a interest mortgage, because, one is meant to be a profitable function and the other one is if you're buying your forever home, so to speak, and you want it's just understanding. And again, we've done the one workshop where you came in. We've had maybe, I'm going to say 3 meetups where we've spoken about property, and that's been prompted by myself because I may have had a question. So I'm by no means well versed in this, but I know enough now to understand things that I didn't even know were a thing before, which makes me feel a lot more comfortable in terms of buying property. And like you said, I know you're always there. I can always call you. I can always text you. Because I've brought this one, it doesn't mean that it's done now. It's you will continue to help me with this. And it's almost to the point where I don't even actually know who's doing what with this house. I just know I'm making money. Do you know what I mean? It's honestly to that point,
But, I really admired the fact, actually, it was a few weeks back, you sent me that link for that house that you liked.
Oh, yeah.
You bounce it off me to go, Lee, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
But our advice, or my advice to you, is always going to be free. And I want to encourage you to start looking for a home, and if you've seen something you like, get involved. I mean, I've been very fortunate with your teammates, obviously I work for Bayo, Bigsy, I have Curtis, Jamie, Nick Freeman. Is property something you boys talk about? Whether it's, on a coach, train, knocking about training?
Yeah, so I think the beauty of the group is because there's a lot of young and old and times have changed now, the conversations we're having as older pros, so to speak, are different. When I was a young boy coming into the game, I wasn't hearing the senior boys talk about property. They were talking about, going to the London nightclubs and spending thousands of pounds on tables. So that's what I wanted to do, right? Because I wanted to be like them. Whereas now the conversations we're having in the dressing room are about investing, properties, stocks and shares, Bitcoin or cryptocurrency and all these things. So it's so when the younger boys are hearing these types of conversations, they want to be like us and better, right? Because they look up to us and they're like, wow, I want to be like him. And these are the conversations they're having. So you find a lot in our dressing room. We talk about investing, we talk about bonds, we talk about property, which is a big, and like you said, Nick, he's bought his second one or trying to buy his second one or whatever his second one's gone. Yeah. Curtis again I think he's got his second one. Bigsy, you helped him find his forever home, so to speak. Bayo. So it's now we're looking at properties. I've got Rightmove on my phone now, and every so often I have a look and be like, oh, I like this. I wonder what I can do. Can I buy this? Let me message Lee. Let me ask. You know what I mean? And I think, and another thing that is vital to say is that you do not take payment until the deal is done. So you will help us. You will not waste. You will give all your time, all your energy, your effort to us, trying to get us or trying to help us buy that property. And if it falls through, you don't get paid. So it's the
fairest way, we don't ask you to sign anything. We don't ask for any money up front. No, we'll never do that. It's all about the longevity, isn't it? And to be honest, it's the friendship, you know, we're always going to work together. We'll always be mates, and you know, and that's what we really enjoy. I mean, I'm so glad you turned up to that workshop, mate. Honestly, because we bought that property, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You wouldn't have come on the pod, and you wouldn't be a landlord. You know, I mean, the last question before, I know you're busy. Look, do you mind just saying to any young professional, what do you think of the importance of getting onto the property ladder at the youngest age you possibly can? Because I know you were talking about inspirational conversations between the older guys talking about investment and property and bonds and shares and stocks and stuff like that. But that will inspire them to also follow the roadmap that you've gone on to do now. But what would you say to the younger players now, knowing that what you know now?
Listen, while you don't have any responsibilities, i.e. rent, children, do you know what I mean? While you just have a phone bill and a car, but, you know, don't go crazy. Invest in property. It's a sound and safe investment. It's easy. It's free money. Do you know what I mean? It's free money. Like, why wouldn't you? And the thing is, everyone overestimates what they can do in a year and underestimates what they can do in 10. So everyone thinks about, oh, what can I do right here, right now? Well, what you can do is you can save your money. You can speak to Lee about getting onto the property ladder. You can buy a property, and in 10 years' time, when that one property has afforded you 10 more and you're earning £1,000 rent there, 1,500 there, 500 here and there, and you've got money coming in for doing next to nothing. One, you're earning another stream of revenue. Two, it makes your football so much easier because now you're taking away the financial burden of football and worrying about another contract or what your next, because you know you have safe money coming in monthly. And if I had another revenue stream at such a young age, I would have gone about my football in a completely different manner. And I would say that as good a career I've had, I would have enjoyed it a lot more had I have had property making me X amount of income monthly. That's a fact. That's a fact.
That's really great advice, Darius. And I can see why your Instagram name is Everyone Loves D, because everyone does it, mate. You're so likable. You're so infectious. Cheers for coming on the pod. It's always, I've really enjoyed it, mate. I've loved reliving that moment about Wycombe. I've loved talking about your career. I really enjoyed researching. I texted you actually at the weekend saying how much. Keep making miracles happen, mate. Good luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you, Lee. Take care. It's always a pleasure.
Catch up soon, okay, mate?
Bye.
Cheers, my man.
You've been listening to Talk Sport and Property. Visit the App Store and download the MPH Sports app today, or keep up with us over on Instagram.